Story 1. The Guest Under the Daybed. Growing up, our house was bigger than most in the neighborhood, a point of quiet pride for my parents, though we kids barely appreciated it. On the east side of the ground floor, past the laundry room, there was a narrow den that nobody really claimed. My older sister called it the Forgotten Room, which felt accurate. It had a worn daybed, a floor lamp that flickered if you looked at it wrong, and a small wooden end table with a drawer that never fully closed. We used it for nothing. It sat there like a room, waiting for a purpose that never came. I was 15 when it happened. It was a Tuesday in late October, and I'd woken up with a sore throat, bad enough that my voice had gone completely. My dad was already at the warehouse by 5 in the morning. My mom dropped my sister off at school and headed straight to her office. I had the entire house to myself, which normally would have felt like a gift. I stayed in bed until almost 11, drifting in and out of sleep, watching the ceiling fan spin. Eventually, my stomach won the argument, and I dragged myself downstairs toward the kitchen. I never made it through the doorway. He was standing at the far counter, tall, well over 6 feet, wearing a jacket that had long stopped being a jacket and was now just a collection of tears held together by habit. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there. And when I appeared in that doorway, he turned and looked at me the same way you'd look at a mailbox. No panic, no expression, just acknowledgement. I don't know how long we stood there. My brain had stopped processing time entirely. Then something animal in me took over, and I ran. Back up the stairs, into my room, door locked, dresser dragged across the floor until its legs screamed against the hardwood. I called my mom before I called 911, which I now understand was the wrong order. She fixed that immediately. 12 minutes later, I watched 2 patrol cars pull up from my bedroom window, and I didn't come out until I saw officers moving through the front door below. They searched the house, found nothing. No broken entry points, no open windows, no sign of forced access. One officer told me, not unkindly, that sometimes stress and illness can make the mind do strange things. I didn't argue. I was just glad to be standing next to people with badges. My parents arrived within the hour. My mom held me. My dad walked room to room himself, jaw set, like he was going to handle it personally if he found something the police missed. He didn't find anything either. The officers were wrapping up when one of them, a younger guy, maybe late 20s, stopped near the entrance to the Forgotten Room. He crouched down beside the daybed and went quiet for a moment. Then he called us over. Stuffed beneath the daybed frame, pushed back against the wall, were bags. Walmart bags, grocery bags, a duffel with a broken zipper. Inside them, food wrappers, weeks old and rotting, a crumpled water bottle collection, some of our own things, a pack of wipes from the bathroom closet, a phone charger we'd spent a month looking for, and one bag, sealed and heavy, that I won't describe beyond saying it confirmed someone had been sleeping there long enough to have no other option. Whoever that man was had been living in our Forgotten Room. Not for a night, for weeks. We never figured out how he got in. The locks were intact, the windows were fine. He had simply been there, underneath a piece of furniture no one ever moved, in a room no one ever used, breathing the same air as our family every single night, The thing I still can't explain is the smell, or rather, the absence of it. Weeks of rotting food and waste tucked beneath a piece of furniture 20 feet from our kitchen. And none of us had noticed a thing. We gutted that room before the month was out. Daybed, lamp, end table, all of it gone. My dad put in a small breakfast table and 4 wooden chairs with no space underneath them. Solid legs, no clearance, no shadows. I left for college the following fall. I still catch myself checking under furniture before I sit down. Story 2. Cecil knew. This was probably 12, 13 years ago now, so the details have softened a little at the edges. But the important parts, I remember, like they happened last week. I was 17, a junior in high school. My parents had driven 4 hours to attend my aunt's wedding, staying overnight at a hotel near the venue. My older brother Marcus was pulling a double shift at the distribution center where he worked weekends. That left me alone in our row house in a neighborhood on the east side of the city. The kind of block that had been decent once and was visibly deciding whether it still wanted to be. I wasn't bothered by the solitude. If anything, I'd been looking forward to it all week. My plan was simple and perfect. Pizza, PlayStation on the big TV in the living room, a couple episodes of whatever I was watching at the time, and eventually falling asleep on the couch with our beagle, Biscuit, using my leg as a pillow. Biscuit was 10 years old and operated on a strict schedule of eating, sleeping, and relocating to wherever the warmest patch of sunlight had moved. He had never once in his life barked at anything with real conviction. The most aggressive thing I'd ever seen him do was growl softly at a vacuum cleaner and then walk away, apparently satisfied that he'd made his point. It was just past 1 a.m. The pizza was gone, the game was off, and I was half asleep when I heard the first bang from the back of the house. I didn't move. City sounds. Dumpsters, raccoons, someone's back gate swinging in the wind. I'd grown up with that soundtrack. Biscuit lifted his head off my leg, ears up, the skin along his back rising in a ridge I'd never seen on him before. I scratched behind his ear and told him to relax. 2 minutes later, a second bang. Slower, more deliberate. Biscuit launched off the couch like he'd been fired from something. He hit the floor running and tore toward the basement door at the far end of the hallway, barking in a register I genuinely did not know he possessed. Not the half-hearted noise of a dog who heard a squirrel. Something lower. Something that came from his chest. He planted himself in front of that door and did not stop. Through his barking, I could now hear it clearly, a rhythmic, persistent impact against the basement's rear access door. That door led to the back alleyway. It was heavy and rusted, and even with a key, it required your full body weight to budge. Someone was working on it from the outside. I knew the logic. Everyone who grows up in certain neighborhoods absorbs it without being taught. A person who tries a locked door and moves on wants what's inside. A person who keeps trying after it, doesn't open, wants something else. I went upstairs and pulled the baseball bat from under my bed. Then I went back down toward the basement. I know. I was 17, and I had a macho teenager's understanding of danger, which is to say, almost none. But I also had no car, no neighbors I trusted, and a response time in that part of the city that was not reassuring. Biscuit passed me on the stairs, going the other direction, moving faster downward than I was moving down, barking with everything he had. From outside the door, clearly audible, a man's voice said, "Oh hell." Banging stopped. I sat in that basement with the bat across my knees until Marcus's headlights swept across the small basement window at 6 in the morning. I told him everything. He went to the back door, grabbed the handle, and pulled, and the door came off its frame entirely. The rust had eaten through the lower hinge completely. One more good push from the outside, and it would have swung open. Whatever was on the other side of that door that night, Old Biscuit scared it away before it finished the job. People always say, that's just what dogs do when I tell them this story. But I grew up with that dog. I knew every sound he made and didn't make. What came out of him that night was not something I'd ever heard before and never heard again. It was like he understood exactly how close that door was to giving way, like he was buying time and knew it. We lost Biscuit a few years back. He'd stopped eating, stopped moving much. The vet said it was just age finishing what age starts. Before they gave him the injection, I had a few minutes alone with him in that room. I thanked him for 10 years of company, for every night on the couch, and for one specific night when he ran toward the thing I should have run from. I'm certain I wouldn't have the life I have now without that stubborn, lazy, extraordinary dog. Story 3. The Voice in the Storm. I was 13. I still live in this house. I still don't have an explanation. We're in tornado country, and I'd grown up understanding that when the sky turned serious, you moved downstairs. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor, and I was a deep enough sleeper that my parents had drilled it into me since I was small. Storm comes, you go to the ground floor. You don't wait to be told. That night, a strong system had been moving through since sundown. By midnight, it was loud, the kind of rain that doesn't fall so much as attack. I'd migrated down to my parents' room with my phone and our dog, Pepper, a shepherd mix who was 11 and unbothered by everything. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through videos, waiting for the worst of it to pass. It was 12:43 a.m. when I heard my dad's car pull into the driveway. There was no mistaking it. He drove a Crown Victoria with a modified exhaust system that announced itself 2 streets before he arrived. The entire neighborhood could identify that car by sound. He'd been working a late shift and wasn't expected until closer to 2. But schedules changed, and I figured he'd made good time. I started gathering my things to move back upstairs since he'd want the room. But a few minutes passed, and I heard nothing from above. No footsteps, no door, no voice. I walked to the bedroom window that looked directly over the driveway. Nothing. No car. The driveway was empty and dark and wet. I stood there long enough to be sure I wasn't misreading the angle. I could see the entire length of the driveway from that window. There was no vehicle. I told myself it was a passing car on the highway that ran parallel to our street. The bass carrying in the rain, bouncing off surfaces, tricking me. It made sense. I sat back down. Pepper put his head on my knee and sighed the way old dogs sigh. Then I heard a cough from the direction of the garage. My dad had a very specific cough. Years of cigarettes had given it a texture that was completely his own. What I heard from the garage side of the house sounded exactly like it, but I had not heard the garage door open. The mechanism on that door was loud enough to hear from anywhere in the house, the kind of loud that woke you up no matter what. I hadn't heard it. I sat very still. Pepper was looking at me the way dogs look at you when they're trying to understand your expression. Not alert, not tense, confused by me. Then, from somewhere, I couldn't place exactly where, I heard my name. Softly, the way my dad called me when he didn't want to wake the house. Just my name, once, in a voice that was almost his. I did not move. I don't know how to explain the next part, except to say that something in my body simply refused. Some part of me understood that the correct response was stillness and silence. I lay down, pulled the blanket up, and stared at the ceiling while the storm continued shaking the windows. I kept my breathing steady. I held on to the knowledge that the door to the room was locked. Pepper never moved, never made a sound. I don't know when I fell asleep. I woke up at 4 a.m. and looked out the window. My dad's Crown Victoria was in the driveway. I went upstairs and found him asleep in the master bedroom. He'd come home around 2, just like he'd said. I told him everything over breakfast. He listened carefully, the way he always did, and then he walked the entire perimeter of the house. Garage, side door, back door. Everything was locked. Everything was as it should have been. I don't believe in the kind of explanations people usually reach for. But I believed what I heard that night. And I believed that my name came out of a voice that was not my father's, from a room that no one had entered. I still live in this house. And on nights when a storm rolls in and the rain hits the windows hard, I stay very still, and I do not answer anything that calls my name. Not my father's, from a room that no one had entered. I still live in this house. And on nights when a storm rolls in and the rain hits the windows hard, I stay very still, and I do not answer anything that calls my name.